Boom, we at the halfway point in the XFL season, and while the TV numbers have unfortunately continued to slide, I think it's still a pretty good sign that this first year league is outperforming some spring sport mainstays. Houston remains undefeated through week 5, but not without some major controversy. The XFL screws up, but owns up to their own mistake and takes steps to correct the problem. We saw a couple teams bounce back this week. One Giant take a little bit of a tumble, all in what was an exciting week of XFL football. So how's the league doing after 5 weeks? It's time to discuss. Without further ado, y'all already know what time it is, fellas. Cue the wing.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Yo, if you plan on attending any XFL games this season, you can do so using today's video sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is an app where the whole purpose is to simplify the ticket buying process. XFL, NFL, NBA, live concerts, what have you, whatever, you can buy tickets on SeatGeek. Once you find your event, they grade each ticket on a scale from 1 to 10, and green means a good deal, red means a bad deal, so you can pretty much decide in a glance. If you want to download the SeatGeek app, all you gotta do, click the link in the description and don't forget to use my code, FlemLo. That's gonna give you $20 off your first purchase. Let's get it. Let's start out with the New York Guardians, a team that only scored in double digits in one of their first 3 games and quickly became a punchline after falling 27-0 in week 2. But after that ugly 1-2 start, they've actually rebounded pretty strong over the last couple of weeks, taking out the LA Wildcats in week 4 and then most recently beating a shorthanded Dallas Renegades squad in week 5. The team has looked much better with Luis Perez under center, and their defense forced the Renegades into multiple interceptions as they walk away with a 30-12 victory. Moving on, Cardale Jones has continued to struggle for DC, and finally they decided to move on from him. They gave the 6'7", 250-pound Tyree Jackson a shot, and while his numbers don't jump off the page, dude was definitely efficient. He didn't turn the ball over, and it turned out that was all DC needed to upset one of the top teams in the league in the St. Louis Battlehawks. In this game, Jordan Teamu was held under 200 passing yards and did not produce a single touchdown. That's very uncharacteristic, as Teamu is one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But DC's defense actually came through and held St. Louis to only 2 field goals. DC had seemed like they were in free fall over the past couple of weeks, so it's nice to see what looked like an early juggernaut team actually bounce back after stumbling a bit and reclaim their spot at the top of the East. Yo, the Tampa Bay Vipers and the Wildcats had a shootout as they combined for 75 points. Josh Johnson has been really putting his extensive NFL experience to great use as he threw for 4 touchdown passes and only 1 interception in the game. And this current Tampa Bay team is much improved over the Vipers we saw at the beginning of the season. However, they keep fighting, they keep coming close, but they're not finding a way to actually win these close games. 3 turnovers by Vipers quarterback Taylor Cornelius, including a late fumble that was recovered by LA and taken for a score, pretty much sealed Tampa Bay's fate in this one. And it sucks because Cornelius played really well early and built up a pretty sizable lead, but the Vipers defense could not stop LA, and then later in the game, Cornelius had to force some passes trying to make plays, and he just ended up turning it over. Wildcats win 41-34. And finally, we get to the most controversial game, not only of the week, but of the entire XFL season. My Houston Roughnecks versus the Seattle Dragons. Now, Seattle has been a very dangerous team ever since BJ Daniels took over at quarterback. He scored 2 touchdowns on the ground and created several opportunities for some big plays by buying time with his feet, but fortunately for Houston, he just missed on quite a few of them that could have changed this game. From a production standpoint, we already know what to expect from PJ Walker. He is the current XFL MVP, and I don't see that changing throughout the second half of the season. In this game, he threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also had a number of mistakes that nearly cost Houston this game. He threw 1 really bad interception to a DB that was lurking underneath, and his second interception was one of those plays where literally everything went wrong for Houston. I should probably watch the highlight before I try to recall it straight off of memory, but I'm gonna take a chance, let's gamble. Hopefully my memory actually lines up with what happened on the field. But I believe on PJ's second interception, this should have been a hole throw thrown with pace between the corner and the safety, but PJ ended up lofting it a bit. He's got that great touch on the ball, but in this situation, it was the wrong type of throw to make. Even still, the safety had to make an unbelievable play, tracking the ball absolutely perfectly, going up, high pointing the ball absolutely perfectly, managing to get a foot inbound and maintaining control through his fall. An unbelievable pick. Hat goes off to the safety for that one. But perhaps PJ's biggest mistake came on the last play of the game. To be clear, this wasn't just on PJ, but as the clock ran down, you could hear June Jones trying to tell PJ to drop back and throw the ball deep and out of bounds so that the final few seconds would run off the clock. The thing is, Houston actually had a timeout left, and it would have behooved them to call that timeout with 1 second left on the play clock. Instead, they snapped the ball and PJ couldn't hear his coach with everything going on. So PJ dropped back, attempted to run the clock, but instead of throwing it deep and out of bounds, he instead took a knee. The refs blew the whistle, game over. Everybody carried on as they would when a game ends. Houston celebrated, the teams and coaches shook hands, took pictures, the refs jogged to the locker room, but the whole time the TV crew and everybody that was watching on TV could clearly see that there was 2 seconds left when PJ took his knee, which meant that the Dragons should have gotten the ball back with a chance for one more play. Now the thing is, they was only down 9 points, and we know in the XFL, because you can go for 3, 9 points is a 1 possession game. So the Dragons should have gotten the ball back with 2 seconds left with an opportunity to score and then attempt a 3-point conversion. If they got it, the game goes to overtime. But because the refs missed it and said the game was over prematurely, the Dragons did not get that chance. The officiating supervisor was like, yo, there's nothing I can do. It's out of my hands at this point. But it was like, bro, all the players still dressed out. The refs like right there. Like they literally right there in the locker room. Like they can come back out. And had they actually done that, what most likely would have happened is BJ Daniels throws it up, somebody bats it down, game over. But because they did not do that, it ended up ending prematurely, and they weren't afforded that opportunity that they definitely deserve. Because you never know how this stuff is going to play out. As unlikely as it is that they'd score on one play and get the 3-point conversion is obviously super possible and could have happened. So basically, it looked bad, the game ended prematurely, and it wasn't a great look for the XFL. With that said, let's not act like the NFL, NBA, and other major sports leagues have not had huge officiating mistakes that have cost teams games. This type of thing does happen, but I mean, obviously you don't want it to happen. But after it was done, it was done. And I did really like how the XFL decided to handle it. Shortly after the game, they released a statement. Here's what they had to say. Saturday's Seattle Dragons Houston Roughnecks game should not have ended as it did. Replays showed clearly that the knee of Houston quarterback PJ Walker touched the field, rendering him down, and the 4th down play officially completed with approximately 2 seconds remaining on the clock, effectively turning the ball over to Seattle on downs. With a 9-point differential in score, Seattle was denied an opportunity to tie the game. The XFL sincerely regrets this error. In addition, Wes Booker, who served as officiating supervisor for Saturday's game, has been reassigned. Like I said, you obviously don't want something like this to happen, but if it happens, this is the best way that you could possibly deal with it after the fact. Own up to the mistake, apologize for making the mistake, say that you won't make the mistake again, and then take some action on the employee who was supposed to make sure everything went right in that situation. In this case, that was the officiating supervisor who's now been reassigned. So there it is. All right, man, so this is the point in the video where I dive into the TV numbers. All right, man, I was just about to upload this without Saturday's TV numbers. It's 7:20 p.m. Central Time. They just now came through, but here they are. Seattle versus Houston did 1.5 million on ABC, and New York versus Dallas did 1.4 million, which you can pretty much round up to 1.5 as well over on Fox. That stacks up right beside Kentucky versus Florida college basketball on CBS and actually beat out UCLA versus USC also on CBS. So the Saturday numbers remain strong, but on Sunday, things were a little bit different. The St. Louis Battlehawks versus the DC Defenders on FS1 pulled in 767,000 viewers. As you can see, dropping under 1 million viewers for the first time all year. Now again, it's on FS1. From week 3 to 4, we had a increase on FS1, and this is obviously a drop off. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this game was in a tough spot because not only was it on FS1, but it was on at the exact same time as the Lakers-Clippers game. And I was watching the Lakers-Clippers game. I had the XFL game on, but I was watching the Lakers-Clippers game. And it's hard for me to imagine that that didn't affect the numbers, you know what I'm saying? Then we also had our first official primetime game on ESPN, 9 p.m. slot. Didn't do terrible, but did fall under 1 million, 833,000 viewers. Now, according to what I've read, these TV ratings don't take streaming into account, which honestly makes 0 sense in 2020. Bro, I haven't actually had cable since like 2014 or something like that, but anyway, I just thought I would point that out. Shout out to Connor Folk over on Twitter. I use a few different sources, but dude is one of the main sources that I use, as he's always on point with the numbers and comparisons. And you can see right here that the XFL outperformed once again soccer on ESPN, the MLS on ESPN, the NHL on NBC, and college basketball on ESPN, all on Sunday. So again, while we don't like to see these numbers going down, they're under 1 mil. When you compare it to week 5 in the AAF, the XFL has vastly outperformed everything that the AAF was able to do. Still basically doubling the AAF's numbers from the exact same point during the week, and that is obviously a good sign. Also, the XFL's easily outperforming the AAF in attendance and still doing pretty solid. Now, as far as attendance goes, the XFL continues to do pretty well. 64,000 people over the 4 games this weekend, and that's with St. Louis and Seattle playing on the road, and we all know that when they play at home, they really boost those attendance numbers up. So once you take that into consideration, plus the whole situation with the coronavirus that's going on, 64,000 people is actually really good. And Houston actually broke their season record with 19,773 people in attendance. So as for right now, that's all I got for y'all. Week 5 in the XFL still going pretty strong. Hit me up in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video if you like it, subscribe, and enable your notifications. My name is FlemLo Raps. I'm gonna holler at y'all next time, fellas. One.
Yeah, I'm no quitter, 'cause I'ma go